YASHARAHLA. I want to give all praises and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Wasapadash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, because those are the men who I went the truth from through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai. Yahweh is the true name of the God of Israel. Yahushai, that's what the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ. His true name is Yahushai. And pretty much in this lesson, I'm going to be showing you, according to the Bible, that the Sabbath is according to the new moon. I'm also going to go into the land Sabbath and also a law concerning the year of release. Right? So in this lesson, you're going to understand that the Israelites in ancient times, we didn't have calendars like how we had today. There was no such thing as Friday, Saturday, 7 days out the week. All right. Time, determining a new month, a holy day, all that was determined by the new moon. All right, the Sabbath is according to a lunar calendar. How did you know it was the Sabbath? Well, you didn't see the moon in the sky when it was pitch black. That's how you knew it was a new moon. You didn't have, a watch. You didn't have a calendar. You had to look up at the sky, and then you would determine, okay, how holy day is coming up, the Sabbath is coming up, the moon is waxing and waning, right? So that's how we told time and knew, days was going past, weeks was going past, a new month was coming, a new month is here, based off of what? New moon. So I went on Google, I typed in Sabbath based off new moon, just the AI overview, right? Now it says theory, but I'm going to show you in the scriptures that what? That the new moon determines the Sabbath and how holy days. All right. So it's not a theory. The lunar Sabbath theory proposes that the weekly Sabbath resets monthly based on the moon's phases rather than following a continuous 7 day cycle. In this model, the new moon is a non-working day followed by 4 7 day work cycles, placing the Sabbath on the 8th, 15th, and 22nd and 29th of each lunar calendar. Right, that's what they say. It says key components of the lunar Sabbath theory. They call it a theory, but the lunar Sabbath is based off of what the scriptures. Monthly reset. The week starts with the new moon, which is considered a day of rest or worship. It says Sabbath days. Weekly Sabbaths fall on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th day of every lunar month. Biblical basis, proponents. It says proponents often cited in Psalms chapter 104, verse 19, stating the moon determines set times and points to passages like Ezekiel chapter 46, verse 1, which describes the gate of the inner court being shut on the 6 working days and opened on the Sabbath and new moon. All right. Contrasting view. It says critics argue this theory contradicts the continuous 7 day cycle for creation, the commandment for the seventh day Sabbath, and note that the Bible often lists new moons and Sabbaths as separate. Now that's not true. All right, the Bible lists the new moon with the Sabbath, as I'm going to show you. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to read, the important parts that link up with the scriptures. Now let's kick it off with this. This is the book of Ecclesiasticus, known as the book of Sirach, chapter 43 and verse 6. Now, one thing you need to understand is the Apocrypha, it was originally a part of the Old Testament. In order for you to understand why the Israelites in the New Testament was being called Gentiles and circumcision, and they was looked at as heathens, you have to read in the Old Testament, which consists of the Apocrypha and the books of First and Second Maccabees, to understand how and why the Israelites was looked at and being called Gentiles. All right, it was based off of what? Hellenization. That's recorded in First and Second Maccabees. So now when you read the scriptures, right, Genesis, the first chapter, Ecclesiasticus, what I'm about to read, it's going to prove that the new moon determines the Sabbath, right, and holy days. So Rock 43:6, he made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of times, right? Scriptures talk about blood moons, harvest moons, all these different phases of moons. But then you got the new moon, you know, our holy days, prophecies. It says, and the sign of the world. Exactly. From the moon is the sign of feast, a light that decreases in her perfection. Because the moon that goes through different cycles and then it resets, right? And then it turns black. It says the month is called after her name. So the new month is determined by what? A new moon, which is when the moon goes black. So the month is based off of what? The lunar calendar is based off of the moon itself. So this is in the scriptures. It says the month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing when the moon waxes and wanes, right? Being an instrument of the armies above. Talking about what? Talking about the different stars, right? Shining in the firmament of heaven. Now, let's read this. So this is from Google. I typed in Sirach 43, new moon Sabbath. It says Sirach 43, verses 6 to 8, describes the moon as a marker for time, seasons, and holy days, noting its new moon phase as a renewal or a wonderful change. It highlights that the month is named after the moon, which acts as a shining signal or instrument for the armies above in the sky, referring to the stars, right? Key aspects of Sirach chapter 43, verses 6 through 8 regarding the moon, sign of times. The moon acts as a notification of times and an everlasting sign to determine feast, right? That's recorded in Leviticus, the 23rd chapter. It says the new moon, Sirach, also known as the book of Ecclesiasticus 43 and 8, notes the moon renews itself, new moon, and changes, which marks the beginning of the month. Month name. The month is named for the moon. Read again. The month is named for the moon, which increases in size, reflecting its cycle. It says the armies. It serves as a light for the hosts on high, the stars and armies in the sky. It says symbolism. It is described as a beacon and a shining instrument in the vault of the sky. It says connection to Sabbath and other observations. Let's see if they're going to tell the truth. It says, well, Sirach 43 focuses heavily on the new moon as a marker of times. The broader context of the new moon in Israelite tradition as in the new month is closely tied to the Sabbath as a holy convocation. The new moon in this chapter is portrayed as part of Yahweh's creation, just like the Sabbath. The text highlights the beauty and order of the heavenly army stars that accompany the moon. Right? So they're telling you that the Sabbath is based off of what? The new moon. Let's read in the G&T version. This is Sirach chapter 43 in the Good News Translation, verse 6. It says, there's also the moon marking the passage of time, an eternal sign of the changing seasons. It says the moon determines the holy days. What holy days? The Sabbath. All right, high holy days. That's recorded in Leviticus 23. Its light grows full when it becomes a full moon, all right, and then grows dim when it starts to decrease in light. And then it turns what? Black, meaning what? It's a new moon. You can no longer see the moon. The moon is named So Rock 43 in the G&T version. The month is named after the moon. So what does that mean? There's a lunar calendar according to the scripture. Let's read it again. Sirach 43 and 8 GNT version. The month is named after the moon. The month is named after the moon. So what does that mean? The month, right? A new month is determined by what? The moon, the new moon, right? It says marvelous to watch as it grows fuller each night, a signal light for the heavenly armies shining out in the dome of the sky. It says, so that's pretty much it. Right? So that's it with that. Now, let's get into the requirements, things that have to be done during the Sabbath. So this is the KJV version. This is Exodus 20. And I'm going to read it in the NLT version. All right, Exodus chapter 20, verse 8, NLT version. It says, remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. And another word for holy is what? Keeping it clean. Now, if you read the Levitical law, if you read in the scriptures, if you have sex, you're unclean until evening. You got to take a bath, you got to wash up, you're unclean. So if you was to have sex on the Sabbath, you would defile the Sabbath because you wouldn't be clean according to what? The Levitical law, according to the law in Deuteronomy. NLT version, Exodus 20 and 8. Remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. This is why brothers do live streams. We have a street ministry, right? We'll do lessons. We'll have holy phone calls, maybe holy text messages in a group chat. We keep it holy, right? We keep it clean. It says, you have 6 days each week for your ordinary work. So the day of the new moon means what? It's a new month, and also it's a Sabbath. So during a Sabbath, you're supposed to keep it holy, meaning keep it clean, and also during the Sabbath, you're supposed to rest. Now, the day that the new moon falls on that particular day, is going to be a Sabbath until the next new moon cycle comes in. Then the Sabbath changes, right? Like for an example, as you can see right here, I'm going to type this in real quick. All right, Gina's New Moons, as you can see here. This is a channel you should be subscribed to. Right? And on the channel, let you know particular how holy days, when the new moon comes in. As you can see, currently the new moon is fell on February 16th. So the new moon or the Sabbath is every Monday evening to Tuesday evening until what? The next new moon cycle comes in. Then the days will change. So check this out. Right? So that's the point. So NLT version, Exodus 29 NLT. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work. All right. So as you can see, the Sabbath falls on what? Monday evening to Tuesday evening. All right. So Tuesday evening, that's when the Sabbath will end. Then you count 6 working days until you get back up until Monday evening. Then that's the Sabbath for that month. That's how that goes from evening to evening. Right? And then next month, the days will change. So it says, one more time, NLT Exodus 29, you have 6 days each week for your ordinary work. It says, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest. So you're supposed to rest, all right? You're supposed to rest and keep it clean, keep it holy, dedicated to Yahweh, your God. Because the word Lord is in caps, so it's referring to the God of Israel, Yahweh, your God, right? The God of the Israelites. On that day, no one in your household may do any work that involves your children, your wives. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your livestock, and any foreigners living among you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens. And we read in the book of Hosea, that's one, as I think in the book of Peter, if I'm not mistaken, I could be wrong, but it tells you one day with the Lord is 1,000 years. So when you read, the Lord made certain amount of creation and this day, then this day this was created, that was every 1,000 years. One day with the Lord is 1,000 years. All right. So the Lord, meaning the powers, they rested on the seventh day, which was the 7,000 year. So when you read that, like I said, back during that time, look in the heavens, they don't have a calendar Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You know, they don't have a 7 day calendar with, you know, Greek, Roman, and American, European monthly names. They don't have that in the heavens. All right. Nowhere in the scriptures it tells you every Friday to Saturday, Sunday, or every, you know, Saturday or Sunday it's the Sabbath. That's not in the scriptures because that didn't exist back then. Saturday didn't exist. All right. So it says NLT version, Exodus 20:11. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, right? The earth, the sea, and everything in them. But on the seventh day he rested. So the Sabbath represents what? Resting, not working. It says that is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. All right. So there you go. That's how the Sabbath is supposed to be kept. And check this out. This is yep, yeah. This is Leviticus. I'm reading the NLT version. Leviticus 23:1. It says, and this is talking about the appointed festivals, right? KJV says laws of religious festivals. So it says Leviticus 23:1. The Lord said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. These are the Lord's appointed festivals. Okay, the KJV says, check this out. Speak unto the children of Israel and say unto them concerning the feast of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy, meaning clean. Convocations, even these are my feasts. I'm finishing the NLT, Leviticus 23:2 NLT. Give the following instructions to the people of Israel. These are the Lord's appointed festivals, which you are to proclaim as official days for your holy assembly. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of complete rest. That means no sex. It says, or you can't defile yourself either, right? Can't defile yourself. You're supposed to keep it clean. It says, an official day for holy assembly. It is the Lord's Sabbath day, and it must be observed wherever you live, right? Wherever you live. It says, in addition to the Sabbath, these are the Lord's appointed festivals, the official days for holy assembly that are to be celebrated at their proper times each year. And then it goes into the different holy days like Passover, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, or Festival of Unleavened Bread. All right, so there you go. So now let's read this because you're not supposed to defile yourself. But you got particular Hebrew Israelite camps outside of Great Millstone. But not all Hebrew Israelite camps teach the same thing. The camp you should be following is Great Millstone, GMS. All right, official GMS YouTube channels. Exodus 31:14. Because you're not supposed to have sex on the Sabbath. Exodus 31:14. Ye shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy unto you. Everyone that defileth, let's go into this word defileth. The word there is YASHARAHLA, right? And then it says what? To profane, defile, pollute, desecrate, begin. It says to profane oneself, defile oneself, pollute oneself, ritually, sexually. All right. So when you have sex, you defile yourself. The semen defiles you, discharge defiles you. All right. It says sexually. So that's the point. So now, Exodus 31:14, ye shall keep the Sabbath, therefore, for it is holy unto you. Everyone that defileth it shall surely be put to death. So that's how serious it was. Because when you have sex, you're working, you're moving around, you're sweating, you're exercising, right? It says, everyone that defileth it shall be put to death. So back in ancient times, under 2 or 3 witnesses, you got put to death if you broke, Sabbath. But see, right now, what in the breaks through the blood and sacrifice of Yahushua, we're not held to that old covenant standard. We can't keep ourselves in flesh. All right. So the Lord has us the grace as long as we have faith and believe on Yahushua, right? And follow the men he set up, which is the apostles and men of great millstone as a whole. So it says, everyone that defileth it shall surely be put to death. For whosoever doeth any work, meaning that it's supposed to be kept holy, you're supposed to rest. For whosoever doeth any work therein, that soul, meaning that individual, shall be cut off from among his people. It says 6 days may work be done, but in the seventh is the Sabbath of rest, holy to the Lord. Whosoever doeth any work in the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath to observe the Sabbath throughout all their generations for a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Right? So that's the point. That's the point with that. I don't need that. So now I typed in on Google the showbread and Sabbath. It says the showbread or bread of presence consisted of 12 loaves representing Israel's tribes, right? The 12 tribes of Israel, Jacob, 12 sons and their descendants, placed weekly on a golden table in the tabernacle slash temple and replaced every Sabbath. All right, so the breads, they were replaced every Sabbath. The 12 loaves represent the 12 tribes of Israel. These loaves were eaten by priests, the Levitical priests, right? Now through the blood and sacrifice of Yahushua, all right, we don't need a physical temple, and we're made priests, all 12 tribes, right? Symbolizing a con- conventional or conventional, right? Communal meal, with the Most High. It served as a perpetual holy offering, referring to the 12 loaves, right? Key aspects of showbread and Sabbath. Weekly ritual. Fresh loaves were arranged in 2 rows of 6 every Sabbath. See, so we're under grace because we're not keeping stuff like this. It says, while the previous week's loaves were removed to be eaten by the priest in the holy place. So these loaves were only eaten by the Levitical priest under that old system. So now we understand that Yahweh through the order of Melchizedek, you read Hebrews the 7th chapter, he replaced the Levitical priesthood through his blood and sacrifice. Right? So now through Yahweh the elect men of the nation of Israel is made kings and priests. It begins with us, but ultimately under the new covenant, all Israelites will be kings and priests, referring to the men. Right? Continuing on. So it says in the holy place. So this was done weekly, right? Symbolizing symbolism. The bread of presence, right? Represented the Most High's continuous presence among the 12 tribes of Israel and his role as their provider. Purpose. It was a perpetual statute and a covenant sign symbolizing an unbroken connection between Yahweh and his people, the Israelites. It says ingredients: the bread was made from fine flour with frankincense placed on each roll. Biblical references. Detailed instructions are in Leviticus chapter 24, verses 5 through 9, and Exodus 25 and 30. In the New Testament, Yahushua references David eating this bread to discuss Sabbath, mercy, and ritualism. Right? So that's pretty much it. So now I want to actually read that real quick. See if I can find it. So this is First Kings 21 and 6. Let's see. So the bread is a man coming. Yep, here we go. Let's see. Should start up. Yeah, let me start up and read in the NLT version. First Samuel 21 and 1. This is dealing with David runs from Saul. Right? See what the KJV says? It says David takes consecrated bread. I'm gonna just read in the KJV. Then came David to know to Ablamech the priest, and Ablamech was afraid at the meeting of David, and said unto him, why art thou alone, and no man with thee? And David said unto Ablamech the priest, right? Meaning he had to be a Levite. The king have commanded me a business. The king at this time was Saul, right? King Saul, before the Lord took the spoil from him. It says, and have said unto me, let no man know anything of the business whereabout I send thee, and what I have commanded thee, and I have appointed my servants to such and such a place. Now therefore, what is under thy hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread in my hand, what there is present. I'm just reading the NLT version. It says, 1 Samuel 21:3. Now, what is there to eat? Give me 5 loaves of bread or anything else you have. We don't have any regular bread, the priest replied, but there is the holy bread, right? The showbread. It says, which you can have if your young men have not slept with any women recently. Don't worry, David replied. I never allowed my men to be with women when they are on a companion, meaning a mission. And since they stay clean, meaning holy, even on ordinary trips, how much more on this one? Since there was no other food available, right? The priest gave him the holy bread, the bread of presence that was placed before the Lord in the tabernacle. It had just been replaced that day with fresh bread. Let me read that in the KJV as well. This is 1 Samuel 21:5. And David answered the priest, which is Abner, a Levite, and said unto him, of a truth, women have been kept from us about these 3 days since I came out, and the vessels of young men are holy, and the bread is in a manner common. Yea, though it was sanctified this day in the vessel, so the priest gave him hallowed bread, right, the showbread, for there was no bread there, but the shewbread, right, that was taken from before the Lord to put hot bread in the day when it was taken away. Right? So the shewbread, that was something strictly for the priest, and the priest would eat that, within the temple back then. Right? See, these are customs we lost pursuant to what? Jeremiah 17:4. So everything is a rehearsal. When you read Judges 5:11, everything is through grace. Right? What is the Most High pleased with? When you read Hebrews 11, he's pleased with faith. We're walking by faith and not by sight. The Most High is not holding us to the old covenant standard no more. Why? Because we have faith in Yahushua, and we realize that what? We're sinners, go back to repentance. So yeah, you may have to work on the Sabbath. You might even not intentionally, but you may break the Sabbath. Why? Because you're not in your land, you're not sovereign and independent, and ultimately you're in sinful flesh. We acknowledge that we need Yahushua, and we can't be perfect without him. Right? So with that, check this out. I Googled new moon is the Sabbath Bible verse. It gave me Isaiah 66:23. It says, is the primary Bible verse linking the new moon and the Sabbath, stating, and it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me. Right? And the Lord said to what? Keep the Sabbath no matter what country, no matter what territory on earth you're in. It says, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith Yahweh. This verse describes a future time of universal worship. It says key scriptures mentioning new moon and Sabbath together. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 23, the KJV version and the NIV version connects both as times of future worship. Ezekiel 46:1, the New King James Version states, the inner court of the temple should be shut on 6 working days, but open on the Sabbath and the new moon. 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 23, the New King James Version shows the two men were often grouped together. For why are you going to him today? It is neither the new moon nor the Sabbath. That's a good one. First Chronicles chapter 23, verse 31, and Second Chronicles chapter 2, verse 4 mentions these days as appointed times for offering sacrifices. Right? It says contextual understanding, worship and rest. The new moon, the start of the month, was like the weekly Sabbath, a time of rest and special assembly in ancient Israel. So they telling you that the new moon is what? It determines the Sabbath. Right? Prophetic significance. Isaiah 66:23 refers to a restored earth, suggesting these days remain significant for worship in the future. That's the point of that. Now, you know what? I want to read that Second Kings real quick. Let me see if I can find that real quick. Second Kings, Kings. Yeah. So Second Kings 4:23. It says, and he said, wherefore wilt thou go to him today? It is neither new moon nor Sabbath. And she said, it shall be well. Let's read that in the NLT. Second Kings 4:23. It says, why go today? He asked. It is neither a new moon festival nor a Sabbath, because it goes hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. But she said it would be all right. All right. Just to get some quick context, this is dealing with the Shemanite son concerning that topic. All right. Now let's actually read it. Isaiah 66:23 KJV, and it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, because it goes hand in hand. The Sabbath is determined by the new moon. All right, when the new moon come in, that means it's a Sabbath. Every new month is a Sabbath. It says the high holy days is according to what? The new moon, which is the Sabbath. Shall all flesh come to worship before me, says the Lord. No matter what country you're in, right? Let's read the NLT version. This is Isaiah 66:23. All humanity will come to worship me from week to week and from month to month. All right. All right, that's pretty much it with that. Now I'm gonna start to close it out. So also we have a land Sabbath, right? The land Shabbat or the land Sabbath, right? It's a biblical commandment requiring the land of Israel to rest every seventh year, which is also the year of release, right? During which agricultural cultivation, such as sowing, pruning, and harvesting for profit, is prohibited. Based on Leviticus 25, this agricultural sabbatical, meaning Sabbath year, aims to honor Yahweh as the owner of the land, promote social justice by allowing the poor to eat what grows voluntarily, and encourage environmental stewardship. Key aspects of the land Sabbath. It says agricultural prohibition for 1 year, typically, right? But here it says farmers must cease working their fields and vineyards. This is concerning the land Sabbath, right? Ownerless produce. Whatever the land produces on its own during this year is considered ownerless and may be consumed by anyone, landowner, poor, servant, or animal, but not collected in large quantities or sold for commercial profit. Social and economic reset. Beyond agricultural rest, debts were canceled, going back to the year of release, right? And servants were released, going back to the Hebrew servant law. I did a video on that recently, encouraging a society that trusts in divine provision rather than perpetual production. Jubilee year. After 7 cycles of 7 years, 7 times 7 equals 49. The 50th year is celebrated as a jubilee, which includes further, more intense land release and restoration of property to the original families, going back to Numbers 36. Right? It says biblical and historical context. Divine command. The commandment applies specifically to the land of Israel, with Yahweh promising to provide a 3-year yield in the 6th year to sustain the people through the resting 7th year. Right? Consequences of disobedience. Failure to observe, right, the land Sabbath was historically associated with the Babylonian exile, with the land staying desolate to make up for the missed Sabbaths. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Let me actually read it and close the lesson up. So this is dealing with the sabbatical year and year of Jubilee, which I recently just did a video about that. Right? Leviticus 25:1, it says, "And the Lord spake unto Moses in Mount Sinai, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When ye come into the land, the promised land of Israel, which I give you, that's our inheritance, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord." So it's going into the land Sabbath now. Now this is how we keep the land Sabbath. 6 years thou shalt sow thy field, and 6 years thou shalt prune thy vineyard and gather in the fruit thereof. Let's read this in the NLT version, Leviticus 25:3. For 6 years you may plant your fields and prune your vineyards and harvest your crops. That's what we could do for 6 years, right? But during the 7th year, the land must have a Sabbath year of complete rest, meaning no sowing, no pruning, no type of agricultural work on the land at all, right? It is the Lord's Sabbath. Do not plant your fields or prune your vineyards during that year, the 7th year, right? And don't store away the crops that grow on their own, or gather the grapes from your unpruned vines. The land must have a year of complete rest, but you may eat whatever the land produces on its own during its Sabbath. This applies to you, your male and your female servants, your hired workers, and the temporary residents who live with you. Your livestock and the wild animals in the land will also be allowed to eat what the land produces. All right. So that's how the land Sabbath is kept. So Lord willing, you edified. Shalom.